coming originally from architecture. Then I moved to web development, and after that, I moved to product design, UX design, and yeah, it's been like a few years now. Been like 15 years. So yeah, that's my background. The design and critical community has been like around for a few years now. It's been like 3 or 4 years. And the idea behind this community was to create a space where we could have discussion around design, but not only that. The idea is to bring people from different and various horizon together, being, like from innovation, business, design. And design, when I talk about design, I don't talk necessarily about UX design, but all the fields related to design, whether it is graphic design. I would include architecture in this list as well. Obviously, UX design, product design, and traditional industrial product design and digital product design. Well, the idea is to bring these, diverse people around similar or kind of topics we share or things we share to in handle. I don't know what happened. I'm sorry. I lost connection for a few minutes. Can you hear me well? Yes? Okay,
Yeah.
great. Okay. Thank you. So yeah, so the idea is to bring people from diverse horizon together around similar topics, things we share. Either it is obviously the creation of interfaces, experiences, products, services, whatever. And yeah, so it started like this, especially coming from like having like a lot of experience within UX design, seeing the kind of discussion we had in this space that revolves mainly around the same kind of tools, same kind of processes, same kind of discussions, and also working a lot with people from the innovation side, seeing the kind of tools and the kind of discussion we had as well, which were like not that diverse in terms of philosophies or yeah, the kind of tools we had. The idea was to like create a space where we can broaden up our own perspectives, bring a lot of different ideas on the table, and see where we can go from that. So that's the origin of the community. It's been like, as I said, more than 3 years now that this community exists. We do have like a lot of casual and informal discussions. I hope to keep this event kind of like that. We have like a few things I would like to bring on the table. Obviously, some of the contributor to the design and critical, to the state of design, will be able to also present their the ideas that they brought during the past week. We had like a few contribution to this event today. And so, yeah, but that will be mainly a discussion, I hope. So feel free to participate. So yeah, the topic of this of today is the state of design. As I mentioned, the state of design is a recurring event. We started it last year. And we did that because we felt a need to discuss the kind of the raise of a certain fear in the community, especially like all the discussions around AI and stuff like that. that arise in the community as we will be replaced, what will come to our fields, and the kind of things we do. And so yeah, we wanted to have like a space for discussion, and especially a critical discussion, like to be clear of what are the current things we know, the things that are uncertain, and where we can go from that. So that was the first state of design. And yeah, we had like fewer participants, but it was in the similar vein of people contributing as essays to the discussion, and then ending the week of contribution with an event where we could all discuss about. Sorry, I have to catch something that felt. Yeah. Where we can all discuss the essays, the ideas that was brought during this week. So the past week we published every day one or two essays from our contributors. Some of them are present today, and so yeah, the idea is to let them discuss, let them present their thoughts, what they wanted to share with the community through their essay. And before we do that, I will explain a bit what were the themes and topics that we propose for this year, a state of design. So we wanted to we wanted to discuss about like we had like a few discussion around what is the current state of design, especially like coming from, for instance, things like the collective UX collective trends that were published at the end of last year. We've seen like an interesting shift in the main ideas and discussion that exist in the, I would say, the broader community of design, and a sense of wanting to escape the current state, which is uncertain by definition, and feel kind of themes around a form of techno-optimism that was still there, but transformed of let's do more of this, and maybe at the end of the day we will see how we could still be relevant. And obviously that's how it started, and from there we wrote, I would like to share my screen. We wrote an invitation for participation. Here it is, and I also share the link in the chat. If I can find it. For that. So that was the call for participation, and we have like a few resources there. So if you are interested in taking a look, you are invited to do so. So if I go to the themes, like we had like a first themes around how the narrative we have within the design communities shape the way we perceive the value of design, what we should do as designers to move forward, remain relevant for companies, for enterprises to do what we think we are best at doing. So and around this this topic of narratives, there is obviously a criticism that is made here. I won't go necessarily into the details right now, but I will give you like a brief summary of the topics. So there's this this topographical understanding of the designerly narratives, with the questions around how do collective narratives shape perception of the designer's role in their downfall? Are design challenges rooted in external systemic issues rather than internal faults? How can we redefine the meaning and purpose of design in a liminal transitional space, which is design today? There was this other theme, which was around this idea that we like to believe that we are kind of similar as designers. This idea of that there's something that unites us as designers. But as I frame it in this invitation, we are kind of like sands. Like if you look at it from afar, it seems like coherent and cohesive, right? It's one thing, but when you try to touch it with your hands, like each grain like fall apart. And this idea that it is coherent, but there's a lot of differences between all of us designers, and what is clearly the thing that unites us, right? So what defines designers in the face of diverse practices and perspectives, can differences and repetitions, which is an idea proposed by a French philosopher called Gilles Deleuze, help reshape our understanding of design. And this idea also to bring back a form of humor, an irony in design as a counter culture to the kind of narrative you can see right now in design. And then the last theme proposed here was this idea of catharsis and hope. That idea that we need a place where we can burn the thing from the past, the things we need to left behind in order to advance. What are these things? What are the practices, the approaches, or the worldviews that we have that we need to burn, and to start anew? How do we hope? How do hope and catharsis contribute to evolving and transforming design paradigms? And what new desires and anticipations can guide us in an uncertain future? So that was the themes proposed for this year, State of Design. If you want to go into details, I invite you to look at the link I shared in the chat. And we had obviously a few essays submitted. You can find them all here. I would share the link. Yeah, so we have a few essays from Adapt or Perish, The Layer of Tomorrow, The Layers, sorry, of Tomorrow, Utility at Tomfoolery, Non-Practical Participatory Design, A Necessary Fire in the Field of Design, User Deserve More Than Simplicity, From Ambiguity to Orchestration, and my own participation was More Than Tools, More Than Humans. So I guess from there, are there any questions on this whole thing? Like, have you were you aware of this essays? Are there questions around the themes or the event itself? Stop sharing. Okay, so maybe I will invite I will invite one of the contributors that are there. Like the list is very long on my side of people in this event. So I need to find you back. Sorry. Um, but Amy, I see you writing in the chat. So I don't know if you want to you want to come in. You had a
I just
question,
had
yeah.
a quick question about the themes. I found them so like enriching and vast and just really engaging. I was wondering if there was like a process of how you developed them, and what kind of thinking went into them.
That's a really good question. Um, yeah, it was like a few discussions within the design critical thinking community we had over the end of last year and the beginning of this year that mainly served as the way to kind of shape a bit yeah what were the relevant ideas we wanted to bring on during this event. But for most of it, it was yeah, kind of me exploring like some of the silent, sorry, visible, would say, narrative that I've read so far during the past year around, yeah, like if you follow a lot of newsletters and blogs, basically around design, you find like some interesting similarities, and from there I yeah kind of explored some ideas. Yeah, the idea was to keep it like not necessarily um negative or positive, but to keep it like open-ended, so anyone coming to those themes and topics uh could understanding it in from their own perspective and kind of enrich it from there. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know if I really answered the question, to be frank, but yeah. Um, so I don't know if Remy is here. I don't think so. Um, but I've seen that. Yeah, Trisha is not here. So Amy, if you would like to, I don't know, to explain a bit what was the idea behind your participation, your contribution, which was HCT in Tomfoolery. You brought up an interesting discussion on um, how design can be like sometimes a bit too like that was one of the prompt, right? That design could be kind of too serious about itself, and what could be taken from this idea of bringing back humor and irony as a way to explore a different way to do design, try to be a bit not necessarily lighter, because at the end you could do like serious criticisms of society or serious design serious totally serious subjects coming from this kind of alternative process to design. So yeah, but first, why did you pick this topic, and what was what to you, what is the main point that people should take away from what you wrote?
Sure. Yeah, sure. I'm happy to go into it. When I saw the call for proposals, and you talked about irony and humor, it like struck a chord deep down where I've been thinking a lot about design and the seriousness, quote unquote, of design at especially because I'm in graduate school right now studying design very seriously. And it brought us an old memory of a childhood TV show called Top Gear by the BBC. It's a British TV show about cars. It's three best friends who do very silly things as they explore the automobile industry. They aren't designers, they are entertainers. But they have this segment on the TV show called How To Challenges, where they come up with how might we questions just as we would us serious designers, and then come up with proposals. What they're aiming for, however, is to entertain their audiences to the max. So a very different objective from what we would probably aim for, which is functionality, rationality, replicability, etc., etc. But they are liberated from all of these constraints and produce insanely ridiculous artifacts. Insanely ridiculous artifacts. And in my article, I use this as an opportunity to, one, highlight the credit due to them in their design ingenuity, approaching these topics, and then also maybe taking inspiration from their ideas and ways of thinking in our own practices. So I highly encourage you to read the article. The opening image is actually from one of the challenges. They basically were interrogating the idea of limousines and how limousines are always produced in the US and there are no British made limousines, and why can't they be made from regular cars? And one of the presenters created the Giant Panda, which is a 46-foot long Fiat Panda converted into a limousine. And they test it in the most ridiculous way. I think in this case, they drove celebrities to the BAFTA Awards, and it ended quite spectacularly badly, as you can imagine. But in their testing and enthusiasm, there's like nuggets of gold, of real exploration, of lateral design thinking. This opportunity gave me the freedom to explore why I wanted to become a designer when I was a kid, imagine things differently, challenge normativity, and grow from it. And Top Gear has its issues. Once you guys dive into it, you're going to see quite a bit of controversy, but I still think that there's an incredible amount of relevancy to how they practice quote unquote design as a form of pure humor and entertainment. So I really hope that you all enjoy reading the article. My parents, my brothers, and my friends all read it, and they were like, this is something that I'm so glad that I had the opportunity to write. It's not necessarily something I would have seriously considered for any other kind of publication, but Kevin, you're giving us the freedom to write about what we truly want to write. So thank you so much. That's my little spiel. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Yeah. Is there any questions from anyone here?
A hot tip, each of those illustrations I made myself, and if you want more jokes, I would highly recommend reading the annotations. You might get a laugh from them.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Well, thank you so much. Oh, I see a hand raised.
Yes. Go ahead.
Hasum?
No, I'm sorry. It was by mistake. Thanks. I
Okay.
just I wanted to say a clap, but then I just raised my hand. It's good. Thank you. We'll check it out.
I see another hand, Julian.
Hi. Thank you for that. I really enjoyed that that perspective and that take, and it was great to see kind of an interpretation that you did about the possibility and role of humor and I guess play in a way. So part of me wonders like, how do we think? We agree with it, and it's a great perspective. I start to wonder like, how can you operationalize that? Like, how does that become integrated into the work that designers do beyond just the very thoughtful and insightful paper and the perspective? That's where my mind goes. I mean, I don't have the direct answer other than talking about it more, and for those of us who work maybe hands-on in design, like doing it very deliberately. Like this is Yeah, I don't know. That was my sort of thought on it. Like, of course I get it, and I want to do more stuff that I think all the stuff I do actually, one level or another, is starts from humor.
Sure.
How can you do humor seriously?
How can you do humor seriously? I mean, I allude a little to my idea in the article, but not as explicitly because I haven't fully formed what I'm thinking. But I think humor as a tool starts in design school. And maybe I'm biased because I am in graduate school right now, but embracing failure in school through the use of humor, like what if our design reviews were stand-up comedy sets, if you know what I mean? Like what if we start blurring the boundary between performance and design critique? That's where I think it gets very interesting, where you start developing a laboratory of resistance to, say, attachment to your ideas. You create space there where you're allowed to laugh at your failures in a very productive way. So one of the things, I'm currently at the Graduate School of Design here at Harvard, and I'm thinking of starting a series next semester called Design as a Joke, and get students to present their work from a perspective of wanting to provoke the audience. So you're not necessarily trying to convince the audience, hey, agree with my idea, support me, validate me. It's a completely different relationship to critique. And that's kind of my beginning ideas that are sort of developing from this entertainment-based trajectory of how design can be done and defined. I hope that can give you some clarity in terms of application of these ideas. I think it really starts in design school.
Yeah, maybe just a quick follow up. I think that if there's ways to do it, I totally get what you're saying, and I agree. If there are ways to do it, because the critique oftentimes, especially when we're serious as designers, it can feel antagonistic. Like you didn't quite get the kerning right, or like whose idea was that font? You know, those kinds of things which have an underlying kind of snootiness to it. So I wonder. I think that's great, but doing it very deliberately, like this is, or even having a brief to say, make the most ridiculous user interface you can.
Exactly.
Kind of thing.
But we're absolutely aligned on that. I would love to experiment with design briefs, essentially. Yeah, thank you so much for your question.
I see we have another hand raised, but just before we take your question or point with them, I would like to mention that on that question, Julian, that you just had, I think like in corporate space, which is where I'm working right now, it's hard to bring to officially bring humor or irony as methods or process or anything that would be like truly useful to any project. But if you have the mandate to do something innovative in this corporate space, you can create like a kind of small space where people with whom you work like closely, you can agree with them to approach it in this kind of approach as here, like there's constraints, but what if you just take this constraint and make it like totally absurd? So necessarily, what you will think of is an absurd result, but from there is not like the point to do just that for the point of doing it. Like one of the main criticism that we can make from a show like Top Gear is like it was not meant to be product of everyday use, right? It's not meant to be really used after the show, right? And so like I would say it's something that do matter a lot if you work in any kind of corporate setting. So like you take this extreme idea that you just created and like bring it back closer to something like kind of more like moderate in terms of absurdity, but with valuable insights from it is something that is feasible. That's in some form or shape I could try. I have tried in the past. So yeah.
I mean, I think
that's my 2 cents.
I think what I understand from you, Kevin, is the double diamond, but it's a humor double diamond, right? Where you expand by making jokes and you contract by bringing it back down to earth. That's kind of what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
We do have one more question.
Yes. Go ahead. Go ahead with him.
Willem.
Yes, hello.
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 I was looking for the right button. Yeah, I'm really intrigued by your ideas, by your approach. There's a couple of things I would like to point out, and maybe you've come across people like, for example, Matt Malpass. He's been sort of digging into the critical and speculative design, and what stood out for me in his work is that he was quite frustrated that a lot of the most interesting design work usually ends up in galleries or specific events or publications, and somehow this sort of stays around the field as a satellite or something, as a discussion space. And this was specifically his biggest frustration, was how can we not connect these fields? How can we not work like that in regular design work? So I'm not sure, maybe you've come across his research, because that's his thesis started with this question, and his all his publications basically expressed his frustration. So
I haven't come across this, and it's brilliant. Thank you so much. It would be great if you could link his work in the chat for the rest of the group.
yeah, I'll
Thank you.
put that in the link. And there's one, just real briefly, I think specifically in the Western European discourse, we usually reference the Bauhaus as our greatest example. And I think there's also a mistake in that, because if we would allow the discourse to include people like Raymond Loewy and the American sort of Bauhaus, we can immediately see how they were much more playful, less sort of pretentious about what they were doing, which makes it interesting again. So looking into the sort of post-war development of design in the US, there's a lot more interesting stuff that we allow to be sort of addressed in the discourse. So that's another point.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you. Is there any other questions for me and say? Seems like not. Thank you very much, Amy.
Yep, of course. Thank you so much.
So now I've checked on who are there, and I will invite Pratik, if you want to share a few words on your contribution as well. You talked about this necessary fire in the fields, and the fact that there's still hope. That you talked about like this need to renew the kind of practices and processes and approaches we have in the fields. I think you you took a lot from maybe like perhaps the service design perspective, right? So if I understood well in your contribution. So yeah, I like the floor is yours. We'll share also the link to your contribution in the chat. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, the initial idea behind doing something like this, first of all, the topic was amazing. It was something which I wouldn't have thought of by myself. So it was an interesting choice. But when I started thinking about it, the one thing which I realized is, it's a very philosophical approach when it comes to what catharsis and hope really means. So the initial investigation led me to Immanuel Kant, who initially had three questions, what can I know? What can I do? And what can I hope for? And that kind of instigated most of my thinking. We very well know what he means by what, or rather in our work itself, about what can I know and what can I do, because those are the things that we really do as designers on a regular basis. But the tricky part was, what can I hope for? Now that is peeking into the future and doing a little bit of foresighting. So it's difficult to kind of figure out and answer that question. But looking back as to what catharsis would really help build that towards, and the hope that will allow us to look into that future is really helpful. But and if you also think about what hope really means, it's basically sometimes brushed off as modern mysticism or some form of cynical thought to begin with. But I would say that that actually is a driving force when it comes down to what you would want to achieve out of your own future. And hope do expect that you take certain actions, because then there can be a very easy comparison of what hope and optimism really means. But when you talk about hope, you have taken certain actions. Now that actions could be through catharsis, or that action could be through ecstasis. Now I'll talk about those concepts as well, but that really drives you to move forward. And just circling back about what catharsis and hope, ecstasis would really mean, is the concept of what being in zone really is. So if you are an ecstasis, which means that you can look from a top view angle, you understand the whole picture, you know how the system works, and then you go about doing things that make sense to you. And catharsis is more of a ground up approach, where you're actually grinding, making sure that you're going and experiencing things, you fail, and then kind of take that approach. It feels more human rather than having that ecstasis approach. And that kind of led me to thinking as to how design can be represented, and not necessarily a piece of design, but anything where you do want to make sure that you go through the catharsis process to eventually imagine the hopeful future that you would want to achieve. So I have listed down in my article a few things. Again, this is just a philosophical take, so there might be many other things that we can come up with as individuals, as a team, as a group, or as thinkers. But certain things that I wanted to point out was, are there opportunities for us to be a little bit more detached from the concept of what design really means, be a little bit more sophisticated when thinking about new approaches. Think about how we are, always thinking about our work from, oh, will this really satisfy our customers? Are there any frustration points? Instead of that, detaching yourself from the sense of emotional involvement or some form of entanglement could really give you that balance and recognition that you're looking for. And then you can also look at situations which are a little bit more ambiguous, but we do fear with ambiguity, because then the hope in itself is deteriorates, because you don't know what the future has to offer for you. But that's the fun part. That's where catharsis really comes to picture, where you get that opportunity to be ambiguous, to figure things out, to take that challenge head on, to be courageous, because if you are courageous, then you can be hopeful that your courage that you have shown will result into something that you're expecting and hoping for. And then you also need to think about how things currently are in the realm of absurdity? Do you necessarily need it to be in reality, or does absurdity really would help you even dive into the ideas of what design could be than what it really needs to be or is? So that's where ridiculous ideas and out of the box thinking, making sure that you're basically embracing it, you're accepting the change, you're accepting that you can come up with certain new concepts that are not necessarily out there. You can challenge the existing ideas, and that's where the absurdity part really comes in. I have heard it from my boss saying that this idea is absurd, but that's the whole thing. Like, you bringing up these absurd ideas at the time might be crazy, but if you can prove them with the right data, if you can prove them with the right mental model and right concepts, you will be in a better position. And then just making sure that we do speculate certain aspects of thinking. How do we want to make sure that we present it to our customers? Do we want to which we usually constrain ourselves to the persona that we have identified, but we also need to keep in mind that the persona evolves, because as you keep on improving your product, the customer persona would evolve. How do you take into account of those things? How do you evolve through it? And basically have a forward-thinking aspect to it. So that's really the essence of my article. The whole hope that it lies on is that you as an individual go through the process of catharsis, rather than thinking that I'll just have the ecstasis approach and be in a better position. That usually doesn't work. And the hope would be at the end that you realize that, find that courage, and move ahead from there as to be someone who you think you'll be more proud of in the future. So that's kind of the essence of how I look at it.
Okay, kind of like if we stay in this philosophical discussion, like more like a virtue ethics, like a more like, how do you approach life as a designer, right? Than like kind of more tools or process oriented discussion, which I do find interesting. But do you have like preferred ways to like personally to approach that? In like, if you provide a lot of examples in your piece, right? But like, I don't know if you can bring some examples of what you mean by this life process.
Yeah, sure. So there are a couple of examples which I have already mentioned. I can pull up some of those. For example, being detached is understanding the fact that your the work that you are so much in love with is not necessarily something that you always need to be holding it so tight, because if you do hold it too tight, it is bound to slip off. So how do you make sure that you understand the concept of letting things go? And that's the part of detachment. So there are examples like BlackBerry, one which I have given, where they were just so adamant to change, and that was the downfall of them. Or another example could be Yahoo, who felt that they are the market leaders of when it comes to communication and emailing. Google offered them, Microsoft offered them, but they just said no. So that meant that their downfall was onto them, and they were so attached to their own ideas of how they would want to evolve their product and what do they feel about it, to be not on the same parity as to what the world is viewing them for. So that's how I look at things, is the approach and the idea of how do you imagine and realize the fact that you need to have a concept of change, a concept of understanding, a concept of foresight that will let you know that the hope for your product, the hope for the work that you're doing, the hope for your baby needs to be in the right place, or you will end up in trouble. So that's how things could go wrong for you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or points you would like to discuss with what Pratik just said? are presented to us.
Thanks so much for your presentation. I wanted to pull on a thread that I don't hear a lot in connection with design. You use the word courage, which really popped for me. And I'm wondering, from your perspective, if you can pull on that thread, the use of courage and when it needs to happen and the end result.
That's a great question. In my personal work, the times when I feel courage is most important is when the situation is very ambiguous. You just don't know, you don't have enough data, you don't have enough information about things that you would want to look forward to for the work that you're going to do. And you basically need instincts or the ability to pull from your past experiences, the ability to understand from the limited data that you have and base a judgment based on that to call upon the ideas that you feel would stick based on your persona, based on the information from any of your, let's say, for example, any CSAT surveys that you have done. That could really drive you, but you still need the courage of saying that, oh no, I think the idea that I'm going to bring up based on this ambiguous situation is probably going to hit the nail right in the head just because of the idea that, or just because of the data that you have brought up. So you need a little bit more convincing to be done for yourself and for your stakeholders to be able to go through that process. So that's one part of it. The other part is you also need to have the courage to bring it up to begin with. Like you need to know that the idea that we are presenting or the direction that we are going to go ahead with is something which is going to be fruitful, which is going to be challenging for sure, but is going to give you the outcome of what you're expecting. So once you do that, once you feel like you're in a better position, that's the point where you feel that you will be able to engage a little bit better. So that's how I look at courage. There are many other possibilities where you will feel or have the opportunity to show courage more than what it needs to be. But that's just one of the examples that I can think of.
Thank you. Then, yeah, there's another hand raised. So, Rajan, if you want to go.
Yeah. Hi. The example of Nokia, sorry, the example of BlackBerry and Yahoo. I mean, isn't that because we have the benefit of hindsight? So I think it's very easy to say, yeah, they made a mistake. But me personally, I still like the BlackBerry interface and the way it's different. So my question is, I guess, how would you then know that you're, a mistake is being made? Because in my opinion and experience of being a design professional, sometimes it's very important to stick to your guns and believe your design is different to everyone else, which I think is a plus also. So it's kind of a different it's kind of a difficult question, but I would appreciate if you answered that.
Yeah, for sure. And it kind of goes really well with the courage part, right? Like you as a designer need to have that courage to make a decision. So that's also another good example over there, right there. So the way I think is the opportunity where you need to make a call as to if you made the right decision or not really lies upon not just an individual, but the group itself. So the opportunity, as we say that, yes, as an industry, maybe you the wrong call, but I would rather question that an individual making the wrong call versus a group making the wrong call. The opportunity over there was for let's say for a cynical person to come up and say that, oh wait, do we really need to do that? Is this in our self-interest? Is this something that we need to, detach ourselves from and understand from a perspective of what other companies are really offering? Can we figure out why Google is doing this? What the future of Google could be, for example, in the future, and where do we sit into it? So those are the questions. I'm sure they might have already brought them up, but there was some decision made because of which it didn't go through. Now we don't know the details, of course, but at the end, the decision didn't work for them. And that's how I feel that the reason why the decision wasn't necessarily met was because of the pushback that people got from the concept of being not detached, but believing in their product and believing that they are still able to go ahead with it. Now, on the flip side, sometimes it might just work. Sometimes it is the call might be right. Like maybe maybe they can just go feel that, oh, we made the right call. We are $1 billion company. But that's where the judgment really comes in, and the tact really comes in, and the courage really comes in to kind of figure out what should be the best plan of action for you as a team.
Okay, thanks. I just think, if you don't mind me saying, playing it safe
Yeah.
normally is the best thing, and being a designer that tries to push the boat and think outside the box, it's just very dissatisfying to see that. If you just mentioned Google, I think a large amount of their success comes with just a very simple interface that everyone is used to, and I think the terminology being used to is huge when it comes to interaction with a user and application.
Yeah, I agree. And I'll just stop with one thought that it's very personal as to what safe really means for every individual and every company. Maybe at that point they felt that it's safe to make the decision of not selling to a bigger organization, or maybe they didn't. So it's tricky how organizations would think at the end, but it's a matter of fact of how you make the perception versus perspective is what I'll leave you at.
Okay, thank you. Cheers. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or topics you would like to bring to Pratik?
Great, but this was some good discussion. Thank you so much, guys.
Yeah, I would just like to add something I shared in the chat, but I don't know, Pratik, if what you think about this, because when you brought like this notion of mysticism in the hope, in the concept of hope, which I do appreciate. I would like to propose like perhaps a slightly different approach to it, like less in the mysticism, perhaps. So I frame it as against optimism, or an optimistic view, right? So I say to be optimistic is to expect certain results despite all odds. And the other one, so to be hopeful, is to look at signals of better potential outcomes given all odds. This idea to be open at something unexpected, rather to be focused on only the good aspects of the situation, right? It can be framed like maybe with a few words, and in a simple way, could be framed this way. I don't know if it makes sense to you.
No, I completely agree. And that's where every human being unique and intriguing kind of comes into play, because I completely agree that's where we actually put our hope into that. Do we want to be hopeful, optimistic, or do we want to be hopeful in general? So yeah, I do agree with you.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, Pratik. Looking at which contributors are there, like I think we have everyone. So the last one is on me, because I also participated in this a series of essay. So I will share the link to my essay in the chat. I'm not that good at multitasking. Here it is. Yeah, and I'm showing the screen right now. Right. So I mean, it's not the first time I've written about this. I took like some of the elements I've already talked about and like kind of reshaped it into a longer piece. So my contribution was more than tools, more than humans, and rethinking how design actively shapes the world. I think the main point to me with this contribution was to show that we can introduce like new ideas, how we could introduce new ideas and new methods and new ways of doing within the design space, like taking inspiration from the more like the sociology fields, and how we can bring back this also these philosophies that you can find in modern sociology, like new materialism, into design. So yeah, and I start off with doing like I would say, I don't know if it's a harsh critique, but it's a critique of the current state of especially all the design practices that revolves mainly around digital, the digital space, which I would be inclined to say it's the majority of what designers do nowadays, is yeah, centered around the digital space. And so all the artifacts that we create are yeah, end up being like digital artifacts in some like either it's a clearly like a digital product, or it's more like in a service design way, like multi-touch point ideas, but still remains around this mainly digital space. And so I do like a critique. I do a critique of obviously why I do believe there are in intrinsic limitations in how the design has been framed in this space, especially because of its origins, like in ergonomics and human machine interface, and how its historical evolution path met it with engineering and business management, and how this framed design as only a problem solution paradigm. And obviously, I do also a critic of how the kind of words, the kind of language we use to describe functional aspects of design. How we do design, like the user, what is the experience, what is the interface, how do all of that relates to goals, and yeah, I make a critique of how this is by definition dehumanizing the people to whom we hope that what we will create will be of yeah, positive, a net positive to their life, at least I would say as designers, right? So yeah, then there's obviously also more like a social kind of yeah, a social or societal criticism, and what all of these practices in design relates to business interests that are that are not neutral in what they are trying to achieve, and how they impact society, and how this is necessarily shaping the ways and the ways we do practice and speak about design by necessity of the constraints within the space. I won't go necessarily into details, but I invite you to read the piece. I also explain how we are, as designers, by necessity, also working in a mimetic engines, that we do create things that are in continuation of things that existed in the past. How this impacts our work, how do we, how this is like perhaps like glooming like reality, but also how this is an opportunity to introduce changes And yeah, and then there's this whole tangent on social design and sociology and kind of new materialism philosophy, which can be really interesting to explore. Like I laid down a few of them with the main ideas and concepts. So I invite you to take a look. But I think the main ideas that are to me interesting in them is like this idea that there's things beyond the human, that there's more than humans, concepts that do matter, that participate in our social experience in everyday life, and that's perhaps bring these kind of ideas within the design practice and philosophies can mean like we can have a better impact in society, despite being like in a space usually where we have like business objectives that don't necessarily take into account those elements. How design practice can take into account those elements. Yeah. And then I go into exploring this idea of social design and what it means exactly, how this can be a tool to explore, obviously to explore how we can do better design, but also like to explore inwards, to better describe what is design, how do we do design, how to talk about design, how we conduct the design, how do we unfold the design process. And then I go to some tools that some of you might be already familiar with, like the cultural probes, using design as a means of research, not necessarily directly as a means of production, and how this can participate in creating new knowledge about the social realities of people. And this can be like really interesting insights to be brought back to the design production to materialize a tangible object at the end. And some tools about how to do that. And then my conclusion is kind of open-ended, because I didn't really frame an approach or process to do it, but I propose like a small a brief idea of what could be this process of I propose like social experience design. We don't need another terms, right? But that's an attempt anyway. So going from probing the space, understanding the collective narratives, then doing some sense-making work, trying to identify what are the main patterns within the social space, using like, the idea of metaphors are good ways to extrapolate understanding from these patterns, social patterns, doing like design fiction or featuring stuff in general to explore what could be a different way to influence the social space, rather than going to the obvious way, which is like we just need this and this other app or this other device to do X or Y. Like how do you see this new app or this new object like interacting with the social space, and what kind of outcomes can this object in relation with the space can bring, would be an interesting approach. And then from there, like trying to see how we can scaffold the space for what we want to produce at the end to create the kind of positive outcomes we want to have. Yeah, that would be it. It's a long, I took like way more time than anyone else. I'm sorry for that. So I don't know if you have any questions regarding this, regarding this piece. There's none. Or perhaps maybe it's overwhelming. I don't know. let me know if if you feel like it's something you could try in your practice. Like, I know we are all subject to different work environments and different like kind of objectives and goals we have to meet every day. But this idea is not necessarily to just be to do good for good, right? It's just to kind of have a different way to understand the world, and then how we can use design to as a means to change it, right? Yeah. So, I mean, if you have to take away anything from what I just said, like for the past 10 or 20 minutes, this is the one. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, you mentioned the obvious things, pretty good observation, and I don't have a comment, maybe, yeah, a small one. So what I see, as you observed how UX and service design is basically operationalized in a certain way. Designers can do many things. My observation would be that a lot of designers don't really practice in a systemic way, right? Because the opportunities, you say, like if you look beyond the product, beyond, you match the human to the product, if you start observing the relationships and not the object, you get, actually, you would get way bigger opportunities as a company if you put it in a corporate world, because then you have bigger ecosystems working together and different value streams to make it very corporate. But question from your perspective, what is your best take on what would have need to change in that frame to change these parameters that UX design and service design are basically matching humans to the interface?
Well, I don't know if I have an answer to that question. Like, it's a really huge topic, but well, I guess we talked about being able to let go. I'm willing to let go UX design, to be frank. That would be one of the answer. Like I don't know if it's a good answer, but the thing is, like, I've never been like that attached to any title or categorization by external forces. Let's frame it this way. So to me, we are all designers. The thing we do within design matters only when we discuss the kind of outcomes we want to actually bring into the world, right? The way we do it, it's important. Once we say, okay, we want to do X or Y, we want to bring this, how we can do that. Maybe it's a service design, maybe it's UX design, maybe it's product design, maybe it's architecture, maybe it's urbanism, whatever, tools fit the situation. To me is yeah. So it's a kind of non-answer from me. I'm sorry for that, because I don't have I don't think I mean, it will be difficult to change UX design, because one thing I do observe a lot, to me, is that the definitions are not our own. We never, like, no one had a say on what is design, UX design, and how it is perceived, within companies right now. Maybe a few people had, like maybe 50 years ago, but it's not true anymore, right? We don't decide what UX design is. There are expectations of what a UX designer should be or should do, right? And this is what is framing the space. So if to be able to go outside of this frame, we need to abandon some terminologies. I'm totally willing to do it. That would be a way of doing it, right?
Yeah, thanks a lot. Yeah, last comment, maybe rephrasing the design challenges could be something, right? Where you start, like reframe not always
Yeah.
on the KPI or the output, because of course, if you work for a big company, you are the tool to make it happen, right? To make the business goal happen. But under the hood, how you do it and how you frame the challenge might be a point where you can start.
Yeah, I agree. The only limitations I do see with that is to which extent you have the not only the power, but the power and the responsibility to do it. Like usually designers have like are unsatisfied with the kind of liberties or freedom we give them in deciding how they want to perform design. Like going outside of what is believed and understood as design or UX design within a company is even like more complex than that, So I agree, like reframing the challenge is a good approach, but then soon enough you will be hit by the reality that people won't let you go in in this kind of alternative space where no one understands it, right? So then there's a huge work, like from the design side, from the designer's point of view, to not only just put words and labels on things and expect people to understand, but accompany people to, in this whole journey, right? And this can be done only with a certain level of trust, mutual trust with the rest of the people within the organization. And I mean, it's true wherever you are, like if it's a corporate situation or anything else, this will remain true, right? So there's a kind of social aspect to design within an organization that cannot be, really overlooked. And yeah, for better or worse, it relies on the designer to be able to carry this process. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Kevin.
Thank you for the question. I see a few hands raised. So Julian, would you like to take the next one?
Yeah, maybe as you were talking, I started thinking about a little project that I'm working on with a colleague, which is he's at a big East Coast university, and one of the things that he's been asked to help them with is to develop a design program within their entrepreneurship school, which is super fascinating and interesting, and also kind of like, really entrepreneurship and design, of course. But one of the things that we've been approaching it with, that we're workshopping, is to do a design fiction about what a future design pedagogy might be and what that might look like. But like really on the ground, like doing the brochures that you get at the admissions center. What is the the material that you might get if you send off to get more information about the program? What does the curriculum look like? And even going so far as to just really reimagine even the physical infrastructure. Like, where is it? How does it happen? Where does it happen? And all these kinds of things, which is super fun. So kind of, in a way, bringing that humor and playfulness, because you can do that with this other also very serious question. Because I think there's a lot that us as emerging practitioners, or even maybe quite senior in this space, having done design and occupied the space for decades, perhaps, both commercially and in education, academia, and so forth. But then to imagine that actually this project isn't for us. This project is for the next generation, for the generation that will be emerging over the next 10 or 20 years. How do you really introduce a shift in the it's just the ontology of design? Like, what is it to be a designer? What are you actually doing? Are you sitting there? Is it all about having your Copic markers and making things look fast or sleek, or having being able to draw a perfect line? Or is there something that we're not even imagining that it could do? And so I think maybe earlier someone mentioned letting go of the things that you love and you think are great. Like maybe it is just really it would look completely foreign to us. How do you start from that? Anyway, that's more a comment. You had a lot of material. I don't know if I can get into it in particular, but that's what it made me think.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Just I don't know if everyone here knows about you, but Julian is one of the minds, if I can say, the mind behind design fiction. So if you don't know about his work or what is design fiction, I do incite you to take a look, because it's a really an amazing tool. And it's not only a tool. To me, it's like it's a way to approach design, and to Julian to go into the same direction as you just mentioned. It's to me, it's one way to probe the social space, which I do find really interesting. So yeah, I can only relate to what you just what you just said. Thank you. Willem, go ahead with your question.
Right. Yes. Well, attaching my question to the conversation, I was thinking about what happened, I think 6 or 7 years ago. For most of us, a well-known company called Frog Design, originally German, later international, was in this situation, which some of us might recognize, working with startups, really interesting new companies, doing interesting work, getting, their bills paid. And some of these startups would move on and just basically have a tremendous financial gain, which was totally not proportionate to the contribution that the designers had made. So that frustration brought some of the people at Frog to say, like, why don't we initiate startups? Why don't we initiate our own projects, our own launching a product, launching businesses, changing business models? Why don't we do it on our own terms, in our own creative perspectives? And this is interesting because at that point, Frog was trying different ways of engaging, getting equity shares in some of their projects, and also launching their own venture capital branch for Frog Design. So creating your own creative liberties. And so also gaining the fruits of your labor, which was sort of their frustration for a lot of their projects. They saw, like, yeah, we were paid, but look what happens. These are tremendously important companies. Why do I tell the whole story? Because eventually specifically the venture capital project failed, and I don't have the inside story as much as I would like to. But apparently it was the financial stretch that was required to keep at it and to bring this product or service into maturity was a timeline that was too much. That was not sort of part of the designer's cognitive map. So it was this contradiction in, I can do things for the world, I love to do things for the world, But the timeline to do this, apparently for designers, is quite short. Just tell me what your problem is and I'll fix it. That's a better timeline. If you really like to have your own space and timeline, apparently that's a struggle for designers, or for most. I'm not
Yeah.
anything general, but that contradiction in time and liberties, and I've also read some literature looking at working under restrictions has sort of beneficial effect on creative contributions. So just to have this idea in this conversation that although liberties and freedom in creativity are quite enticing, you have to also be prepared to work with those liberties and stick to them and fulfill the whole process. And apparently there's a paradox for a lot of designers. So that was just my my 2 cents.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this is really interesting. To me, there's a kind of a two-part discussion within this. What you just said is, yes, this, how do you handle this kind of I don't know if it's a true paradox, or at least the dilemma between, like, this creation act that is, I would say, like, still central to most of any design process, but then maintaining it, like, through time after the creation act, right? Which is like, it's not impossible to handle, but you in a way you don't need necessarily the same people and the same framing or mindsets or whatever to do the two. And so, yeah, this is indeed complicated. Then there's this other part of the discussion with what you just brought, which is how do you finance design, and this idea of gaining freedom in order to be able to create. But they do go hand in hand, in the sense that you need this freedom to create, but then you need the constraints to maintain it, right? Because otherwise you just let it go also, right? Which is, I mean, in a sense, totally fine if you're an agency and you hired to create stuff, for other people. It's much more difficult to do once you are, like, in this kind of a product-oriented way, where you need to, kind of handle the life cycle of your creation, right? Which tends to make you, like, maybe less inclined to take risks, because you will have to handle the consequences of the risk you're taking at the beginning, yeah. So I don't know if I have a good answer, but I feel like it's a really interesting discussion, and this idea of financing design and the space for design, not necessarily in an innovation lab way, but yeah, it's a really interesting topic. I'm not an expert on it, but I do feel like it's a really interesting topic. So thank you for bringing that to the table. Stephen, you have your hand raised.
Thank you so much. I know we're here at the end of time, so I'll make this quick. Thank you for a really brilliant collection of jumping off points on this topic of social experience design. I wondered if it'd be possible to boil down an antidote to, I think, what was the one phrase that kept rolling around in my head from your essay, which was, tech here is not just a new technology, but an extension of globalization of corporate and modern capitalistic values, and as such, it doesn't care about people in their environment. It cares about itself as a system of power. So here's my question. Anytime we talk about tech and we start getting into these design discussions, which happens constantly, is there a simple antidote that we can re-inject into the conversation? Because I'm thinking about writing this down just so I have it and I remember to ask it. And is it, Kevin, something like, okay, great discussion. we take a moment to ask what we've lost by removing the human element? Question mark. Is there a simple sentence that comes to mind that I can just keep in the forefront of my head to ask in these situations?
That's perhaps the big, like, it's a really good question. I don't know if I'm up to the challenge, to be frank, because like one sentence to as an antidote.
To at least get the conversation going in the right direction. I know this is the large essay, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But if you were to say, remember to ask for these diverse groups, because I love this provocation.
I mean, there's no obvious antidotes. I would say it's more like well, yeah. So in the past, I brought this idea of staying like curious explorer of the world, and to me, that in itself is a form of antidote to what you just mentioned. The point is to not accept to be cornered in this problem solution kind of space, and to be willing to say, okay, there's a lot of things we don't know. Let's see what happens. And from there, we will have like, tangible things to move forward, right? To be having this curious mind. But yes, that goes hands, in hands with this idea of critical thinking, because you still need to be able to exclude certain things from, every data or everything. Like, I don't know, like, necessarily to use the word data to explain this, but every signal that comes to you, you need to be able to filter some down and some to increase, and so you need this critical thinking, which is the rational, not only the rational but also the linear and causal way of thinking of things, which works pretty well in this problem-solving paradigms where people feel like they're more engineers in this space, right? But now we want to go in this exploration, right? And this is where it should begin. Like, it's to go in this exploration, and you need to be willing to open up signals you never expected to be good signals for certain things, and the thing which is kind of tricky with this is, like, you only know when something is useful after the fact. You cannot know in advance, right? When you are in an exploration phase. So yeah, that's why you need to stay open, and be able to adjust like in real time. I'd say it's a I don't know if it's a good antidote, but I'd say it's one of them. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Kevin. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for the question. It was a difficult one. So yeah, I don't know if there's any other questions. We can go over like a few minutes more if you want to bring up other things on the table, other points, questions, topics.
It's not really a question, but I just wanted to appreciate you putting this forum together. It was very stimulating, and I really enjoyed it. You usually don't get a chance to talk philosophy, talk something which is much more broader than just nitty-gritty details of how the design pixels should be. So this was amazing. Thank you for putting it together.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Really great stuff. Always enjoy the work that you're doing. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you I mean, I did nothing else than, open up the space for others to come in with their own ideas and perspectives on things. So
don't underestimate the value of building community. That's where it all starts, and it's really hard. There are only a handful of people who are able to do it as well as you do. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Julian. Yeah, thank you, everyone. And yeah, there's another hand. Yeah, Rajan, go ahead.
Yeah, it's my first time here. It's pretty well a good discussion. So congratulations. But just a small, tiny request. Is it possible to like go around to everyone and they can introduce themselves and the area of design that they work in?
Oh, that's a good idea. I mean, I don't know if everyone is. I mean, most of people here are coming like from different, backgrounds,
Yeah.
and yeah. So I do feel like it's a good idea. Yeah.
Do you want me to start? Do you want me to start?
Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, so my background has pretty much been in design for as far as I can remember. I was like, I guess, a child prodigy in fine art before I even hit middle school. What I do now is manage a small R&D company. We're trying to manufacture our own products for planet sustainability and human healthcare. But manufacturing, it's quite a risky thing to go into. So what we're trying to do is license our own patents out to companies just to get the ball rolling, I guess. But can I just say, if you don't mind,
Okay.
I think it was Julian. He was talking about his a sort of design framework. So I'm doing a PhD in design in which I'm trying to design and build some kind of framework, which is his work sounded interesting because he said it was for future generations and for the benefit of design practice. So it will be good to connect with him after this.
Yeah. If you want to, like anyone, if you want to share your LinkedIn or whatever social link to stay connected, don't hesitate to drop it in the chat. And for those who wants to share their background and what they are doing for a living, well, don't hesitate to take the mic. And if not, well, thank you very much for everyone to join, to participate in this conversation. And yeah, I look forward to stay connected with you. Like, so don't hesitate to ping me on LinkedIn. You can follow the community. We have a LinkedIn page as well. We have a website. There's a newsletter. So we are not like always like, sending emails every week. It's not like that. It's once, a few times. And yeah, there's this meetups every month. We have like an informal conversation. You can bring any topic you would like to discuss with other people. So yeah, if you follow the group on Meetup, you can register to the events there. Thank you very much. Have a good continuation.